said it's all that time that Jim was saying.
Do it.
Is it gone? Good evening. It is Thursday, May 4th, 2023 at 6 o'clock p.m. We are at the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. We'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the land of the Minnewacan Dakota people. Minnewacan means dwellers of the Spirit Lake. Our first items on the agenda is 1.0, and that is our roll call. Dana?
Eric Chesmer?
Here.
Louise Hines? Here. Katie Schwartz? Here. Melinda Doles? Here. Simi Petnaik?
Here.
Pat Driscoll?
Here.
Sharon Van Leer?
Here. Next, please rise for 2.0, our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have 3.0, and that is the approval of our agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
It's moved by Katie, second by Eric. Was it Eric?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next is 4.0, and that's our workshop item, and that is 4.1 is our school showcase, being introduced by Assistant Superintendent Christine Schaefer.
All right, good evening. I'd like to introduce Justin Elvold, Cottage Grove Middle School Assistant Principal. He will discuss how we support students and families. Oh, going on and on. He will discuss how we support students and families when they transition into middle school from 5th grade and when they transition out of middle school into high school. He'll also talk about the encore classes for next year and some of the changes that were made mainly due to state standard requirements. Encore classes include things like music, physical education, art, computers, etc. Welcome, Justin.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Executive Cabinet, School Board, and then Superintendent Nielsen. Just when putting together their presentation, I really wanted to encompass the collaboration that takes place not only from elementary to middle school, but also middle school to high school. We are in the midst of our elementary transition meetings right now for our students that will be transitioning to our middle school settings. My counterpart, Darren Nelson, was unable to make it tonight, so I'll speak for both Altman Middle School and Cottage Grove Middle School tonight. So, just wanted to touch base on just the collaboration from elementary to middle school first. As students transition there to middle school, it is obviously quite the transitional process. We are gathering information as our elementary students transition to the middle school. Middle school changes schedule-wise is a lot different than it is from the elementary setting. So 6th grade students are going to have your core content classes of your social studies, your sciences, your language arts, and your maths. They will have the opportunity then to participate in some encore classes and some elective classes. So in particular, the biggest thing that we need to gather from families and students is they get to choose a music transitioning into 6th grade. And really, it starts with the collaboration of the communications department here at the district level. Just they take care of a lot of the behind-the-scenes work in terms of putting the communication together to families and things of that sort. Our band teachers, specific to both Cottage Grove Middle School and Altman Middle School, have actually just finalized going out to the different elementary schools and fitting our incoming 6th grade students with the instrument of choice. And I'll get into that process a little bit later. So. Communication goes out in early January to mid-January because we're up against a timeline of staffing and things of that sort. We want to make sure that we get our registration numbers accordingly, so then as we go into staffing in March, we have the appropriate staffing to support the incoming 6th graders with being new to instrument playing in both the band and orchestra components. So it's very important that we staff to support the success and growth of our 6th grade students so they can continue the progression and progress with their instrument in not only 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. So taking that time and getting that staffing is very important early on. Talked about the band and orchestra teacher time. As I said, Mr. Jones is actually a split teacher between Altman Middle School and Cottage Grove Middle School right now. Has spent about the last month at all of our feeder elementary schools and meeting with families and in particular students going to the elementary schools and taking a lot of time and demonstrating a great level of patience with determining what's going to be best suited for the students who registered for band. And then our orchestra teacher, Miss Peterson, does the same thing as well. So just wanted to celebrate the collaboration that occurs amongst a number of different entities to support our students as they transition to the middle school setting. Also, we are, as we come into May, a lot of things that we're talking about to finish up 22-23, but a lot of planning for a 23-24 school year right now. This week in particular, our sixth grade counselor for next year is out giving introduction presentations to our elementary schools students, in particular, just what is it going to look like as a transition to middle school next year. So it's good to see she came back and reported to us today. The main questions were, when is lunch, how long is lunch, and can we use cell phones? So I was like, ooh, the cell phone, that's a touchy subject right now. But she says predominantly that's what it is each year. You have those angst, you have those nerves, but it's just a good soft start to get our counselor who's going to support those students in front of them before the end of the school year, and then we'll follow up with just a little bit of communication to the parents as well, too. And then I just want to end, we actually, again, specific to CGMS and Altman Middle School, we also support our students receiving special services, and we finished up our center-based transition meetings this afternoon as well. So it's an opportunity where we invite our families in, we invite the students in to meet with future case managers and just gather a lot of necessary information to support the students' transition to middle school and ensuring that we have all the necessary supports in place. And just, again, celebrating that collaboration amongst elementary case managers, support staff, the specialists, the teachers, the principals. It's just the behind-the-scenes work it goes unseen, but it's something that I wanted to showcase tonight and just say, thank you to all the team members who help make everything happen. So transitioning, any questions on like 5th or 6th grade registration at all, or before I transition on? Okay, all right. The big one, 8th to 9th grade registration. So again, kind of similar to the middle school staffing component, high school is a different entity in itself in terms of the number of choices and electives and classes that students have the opportunity to take. So we actually start this process about mid-November. So our students registering for high school for the 23-24 school year, we start the initial planning phase like mid-November. So we're kind of just getting going in like the 22-23 school year. But right after trimester 1 or near the end of we're already starting to plan for trimester 2. And this is where our collaboration, in particular of our middle school counselors and our high school counselors, spend a great deal of time of determining times to come and present to the different middle school students. So in particular for Cottage Grove Middle School, we have our main feeder high schools are predominantly Park High School, and then a small percentage transition to Eastridge, and a very, very, very small percentage transition to Woodbury High School. So mid-December, the Park High School counseling team, along with student ambassadors, come down and present to our 8th grade students about transitioning to high school. Similar to what our counselor is doing to elementary students, Park High School and the high schools are coming down. And just, we dedicate a whole day for this to occur. So again, we talk about that collaboration component of things. Our social studies teachers have been gracious enough over the course of the last couple of years to dedicate and give up some academic time to allow the high schools to come and present to those students. So we give that initial presentation. It's system overload for them. We followed up with some Blackboard communication out to families about, hey, here's what your child's coming home with. Here's kind of some upcoming things that they should be looking for. And then over the course of like the next month, we front load that information to the families to ensure that they have the time to be able to go through and just kind of start to choose their course requests for the high school season, for the high school school year, excuse me. And then as we transition back from winter break, each of the high schools kind of have their ninth grade incoming welcome orientation. So we kind of be able to front load that information for them as well. And then once about mid-January comes, that's kind of when, I don't want to get too technical here, but that's when kind of the registration season really kicks in. So at that point, the high schools come back down, and we work with each individual student, and now this is where we talk about that collaboration. Now our math teachers have kind of dedicated and allocated some time to support the counselors coming in and ensuring that each of the students has properly registered, accurately registered, so then they can start inputting into the Infinite Campus system to then start gaining and garnering those registration requests, and then to allow that, all those numbers to really add up to, that's going to help determine the staffing. So as you can see, it is quite the process, and we're in this, we're from a scheduling standpoint, we're at the point now where we're already starting to schedule for the next school year as well. And from the high school standpoint, they are, they've made the determination based on course requests what kind of staffing they need for the upcoming school year. And again, I wanted just to really highlight just that celebration of collaboration, because it really takes a lot of time, effort, and energy to efficiently and successfully ensure that our students have accurate schedules and are placed appropriately, because once those schedules are set to hit in early August, I think that's kind of the build-up and anticipation to it. So again, as I said, just want to thank everyone, and it really takes a lot of time and collaboration to support that registration process. And the middle school, we're kind of the conduit, right? We get to get the incoming elementary students, but we also get to support the outgoing 8th graders as they transition into high school. So that's what I have on the registration. Any questions that I can answer? All right. Real quick, as in previous board meetings, TLS department has highlighted some of the changes that middle school encore classes will take on next school year. So, it was a change, as Assistant Superintendent Schaefer shared earlier. Just ensuring that us as SoWashCo School District is adhering to the state standards. And in order for us to meet those parameters, we needed to redesign our encore classes at the middle school setting. So in particular, a couple, I won't kind of go through verbatim, but just kind of highlight a couple of the changes from our current to what next year is going to be. I've heard a lot of feedback in a positive way is having art at all 3 grade levels, and it's varied between visual and media arts as they progress through 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade. Currently at the middle schools, art is in 6th grade and 8th grade, so they'll have it all 3 years, and the progression will be, I've heard really good feedback in that regard. Another change, this is one of our bigger changes. I think as we, in 21st century and so much of everything that we do is computer-based, it was important that we be able to offer, kind of the coding and computer science component of things. So it's good to see that go. We call it like the wheel courses, adding that and embedding that early on into the 6th grade trimester course as well. And then our CARS class, that's our reading, communications, arts class. That one's pretty similar as well. And for those of you who don't know, our trimester classes, each class we run on trimesters, so each of those classes is 12 weeks long, so they rotate every 12 weeks. The students rotate between through. So on the 7th grade side, again, this is where we had our most substantial impact and change in the wheel classes for 7th grade. Health this year was in 8th grade. Moving forward, it's going to be moved to 7th grade. STEM, again, was only in 8th grade. It's an option moved in both 7th grade and 8th grade. And then the media and visual arts. So previously, or I should say this current school year, it was critical thinking as well. So some substantial changes, and it's impacted staffing and how we ensure that we are having the necessary staff and properly licensed staff for those courses as well too. So, and then 8th grade, college and career readiness, again, that continuum of, that class is currently and will stay as is. STEM 8 is currently, will stay as is, but then the new, just a bit of a change for it was just a simplistic art class for 8th grade. Now there's going to be a more honed in focus on the visual arts, media arts component of things. So we're excited for the changes. Our students are excited for the changes as well. Our staff are currently in the process of going through some collaboration time right now in preparation before we get to summer to ensure that we can start to adequately plan and collaboratively plan amongst the 4 middle schools to ensure that we're unilaterally teaching and supporting our staff to ensure that they feel comfortable going into the school year only a few months away, that they're ready to support our students and engage our students in a rigorous way with the new trimester course changes. So just a little update on that, and that's all I have to share. Any questions on the Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you have like 6th grade, do they take each of those 3 things, or do they just?
Yep. So each of those courses is 12 weeks long. So in no particular order, a student they would have visual arts trimester 1, then they would have coding and computer science trimester 2, and then the communication and arts reading strategies trimester 3. Good question. We get that a lot.
Why are they called electives?
Electives, encores, because and predominantly 90% of our middle school students in 6th grade will take those encore classes. The elective part comes in because there's an opportunity at 6th and 7th grade where we offer some intervention classes and some other support classes that they may potentially not take those classes in particular. Okay. And as they progress into 7th grade, students have the option to take an AVID class as well, which would potentially replace like a trimester course. And then in 8th grade, they have the opportunity to stay in AVID, but also take Spanish as well, too. So as you progress through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, there's a little bit more choice in preparation for a lot of choice as they transition to high school.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question, too.
Yeah.
So for those current 7th graders that didn't take health,
yeah,
they won't get health.
So they're getting health right now, actually. Okay. So in collaboration with our current health teachers at each of the different middle schools, I can't speak specific to the other middle schools. Our middle school in particular, we're supporting that with kind of like an embedded health right now, where we're having our current health teacher teaching 8th grade, we're going into advisories and getting that health health curriculum for our current 7th graders who won't get it next year. So that was, it took a bit of time to get that figured out logistically, but as a school, we felt it was important that we allow those students that opportunity to get that, to have that opportunity to get the health.
I have another question.
Yeah.
What does CCR stand for?
College and Career Readiness.
For music, you had mentioned that, so in 6th grade they come in, or at the end of 5th grade is when they pick their instruments?
Correct,
okay.
Yes.
Is there like a cap on how many can pick, band or orchestra or choir, or is it whatever a child wants a child?
In 6th grade, in particular with the changes a few years ago, it's very important that we don't put a cap on it. We want to allow optimal opportunity for all students at 6th grade and 7th grade as well. So that's why we start early in that registration process to ensure, if I have, currently I have a little over 100 students in band. I need to ensure that I staff that accordingly. And once we have those registration numbers, we try to finalize those by mid-February, and then staffing conversations start to go then to ensure that the middle schools, have the necessary staffing allocation to support.
Okay, and then how does that progress through, through middle school? Because you mentioned kids can add on AVID or they can add on Spanish, and so there are only 6 periods, correct?
Correct, yep. And that is the constraint at the middle school level as well, and even as you transition to high school. Kids, the retention from our 6th graders who are now 8th graders has been very high. Last year with Full Fidelity, was the new transition, so we've had the good retention from 6 to 7. 7 to 8 is where we lose more of that retention because there's more choice, and then at that point too, students have to make a decision as they're registering for high school: is band, orchestra, choir a pathway that I want to go? Because as they transition to high school, world language is a very popular course and an opportunity for them. So it's it's our, it's our intention, and we do everything we can to have that retention and build a really strong band, orchestra, and choir program. But again, with only 6 periods in a day, students do have to choose.
So what percentage of kids in 8th grade choose to take Spanish instead of continuing with?
Yeah.
And they would give up both music and gym, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The percentage, I will say in particular, I'm able to run, my Spanish teacher for next year, I'm able to run a full schedule teaching Spanish. Slightly under our student to staff ratio of 33 students. So it's high. It's high. Yep. Yeah.
It's like half the grade almost?
Almost. Yeah. Yeah. Almost. Yeah. Almost. Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Justin.
Sharon.
Well, we appreciate all the work you and your team are doing. I'll make sure Principal Scott knows you did an excellent job. I tattled.
Thank you very much.
And especially giving our students a real world view of educational opportunities, and that in subject matter. So I think what you're doing is critical, and we really appreciate all the work you're doing. But I'm still going to tell on you. Okay, thank you. Next is what is next? 4.2, long-range facility planning, and that'd be, it's you again. Okay, Assistant Superintendent Christine Schaefer, and our finance, did you get that? Last week, I don't know what I said, and operations, Dan Pine.
All right, tonight we're going to go through where we're at with our long-range facility process. And so we have a whole presentation, and many of these slides you've seen before, but we're going to go through them quickly for anyone who may be watching. So we'll skim past some, but we want to show you the updates we have so far and all of the feedback we've gotten, and then get your input at the end. So you've seen this slide, again, our boundaries, showing where we go, Cottage Grove in the south, Woodbury just south of Tamarack in the north. We think that's important to show because a lot of people in our meetings haven't known that. And then, of course, the sections of the east and the west. And then again, from the Minnesota report card, our demographics and who we are, 18,994 students, and those are our demographics. And it's important to note that in the last 10 years, our demographics are changing with increased students of color, which is amazing for our students to learn from. And then other criteria, you can see our English learner, special education, free reduced lunch, and homeless percentages of students. And so this slide we had edited based on feedback from our community meeting. And so one of the piece of feedback that one of the community members asked is, when we show this slide, can we show what we had asked for, which is the $462 million, and then also put everything on there that we had asked for last time that we're not asking for this time. And so as you can see, we struck all those out so that when we go out to the community and we ask for feedback, they can already see what we've taken off. And we're not even going to ask for again. And we just left on the things that we want input on in our next plan. So we thought that was a great piece of feedback from our community member. And again, here's our process. And important to point out on this is all of our feedback loops of parents, community, students, and staff. And then again, our guiding change document. And our results, I'll just read those quickly. Again, we're looking to make a 5-year facility plan that prioritizes our needs and takes into consideration our current economic conditions. We may need to consider boundary changes and moving students in schools located outside the city where they live, and also create a funding plan to address the 5-year plan. Those are the results we're looking for, and our unacceptable means will not ignore the economic conditions, input from our community or a survey or a demographic report. We will not close any elementary school, and will not bring multiple plans forward. Right, so up to this point, so this slide we wanted on here just to show everything we've done since that August referendum. So all of our listening sessions, the survey, the demographic study, the 3 community meetings, and then the 2 bus tours for our elected officials. One was last Friday, and we have another one tomorrow. And all of those places we are gathering feedback. All right, I'll hand it over to Dan.
And as we looked at the survey, one thing that really stood out was what people supported a property tax increase for, and that included mostly secured entrances, high school classroom additions, and middle school classroom additions, and CTE spaces. We also were able to find out what the tax tolerance was, what people would support property tax increase to pass a bond. And generally, about over 56% said they would spend up to $10 per month on a median value home in the district. And as we look at whether we need to add on to elementary schools or change boundaries, we did find out that about 34% of those responding thought that limiting boundary changes was very important. Another 42% felt that limiting boundary changes was somewhat important, so 76% of the respondents put some importance on limiting boundary changes. We had a demographic study done also. The results of the demographic study gave us projections for the next 5 years. So these projections are if we do nothing. Right now we have 4 schools over capacity, 2 high schools, 2 elementary schools. If nothing happened in the next 5 years, we would have 7 schools at or over capacity and 3 other schools that be within 5% of capacity within 5 years.
All right, so now let's take a look at all of the feedback we've gotten to this point from our community. So that means our parent advisory meetings, our community meetings. And when we say community meetings, we know that there were some community members that also put this out on social media for people to respond to, which is just fine. But I just want to let you know that we have lots of feedback in here. And so you can see the blue line is what they put as high priority, and the red is secondary priority. So you can see at the top, secured entrances is high priority for a lot of people, high school classroom additions, and then third, middle school classroom additions, followed by bathrooms at Crestview, Hillside, Pine Hill, Pullman, and I think Royal Oaks is cut off on there. That's also another one. And elementary classroom additions. So those were some of the highest priorities. And so when you look at the red line and some of what those high priorities were, it looks like elementary classroom additions is the highest, with purchasing land for future use, followed by high school classroom addition, middle school classroom addition. So that is some of our community feedback. All right, staff feedback. And so this is all staff in our district that represented this information. Again, as you can see, blue is high priority, secured entrance, high school classroom addition. Bathrooms were third, Crestview, Hillside, Pine Hill, Pullman, Royal Oaks. And then middle school additions, followed by elementary classroom additions. And then you can see where the purchasing land, looks like it was a tie right there. That's interesting. And then when you look at the red line for secondary priorities, it looks like land, space for next step transition program, alternative high school, transportation, Lake Middle School classroom addition, so kind of all over the board for secondary, for the secondary priorities. So that was staff. Right, and so you remember, we've had this discussion at our board meeting on April 6th and April 20th. And so here's some of the things that you talked about at those meetings. So some of the high priorities for you were security, high school, middle school additions, combining the alternative high school and next step as a high priority with the high school additions, combining Lake Middle School addition as a high priority with the other middle school additions, utilizing boundary changes to make efficient use of space in elementary schools, and prioritizing the purchase of land to control costs. So those were some priorities you had at the last couple of board meetings. So when we look at all this information and all the feedback we've gotten from community staff and you, these are the items that are falling to the highest priority package. And so we put more detail in these so you can see exactly what we mean by some of the additions. So constructing new secure entry at Woodbury and Park High Schools, Cottage Grove, Woodbury, and Lake Middle Schools for $25 million. Expansion of Oatman Middle School and renovations at Woodbury Middle School. So it's not, there are, and to clarify, there aren't additions needed at all middle school. So that's why we wanted to clarify that. And high school addition just at Eastridge High School, but renovations at Park and Woodbury for $105 million. So we wanted to be more specific on what those were. And so for the safety and security enhancements, so constructing, again, new secured entryways at those 3 middle schools, including a new bus road. Park High School renovating student services space, relocation of the main office, and Woodbury High School constructing a new secure entry, student services wing, and realignment of the parking lot. And then expansion of Oltman Middle School and renovations at Woodbury Middle School. So just more detail about that. Construction of the previously planned Oltman Middle School, because we know when we built Oltman, it was set up to have an addition put on it. So additional classrooms put onto Oltman to bring it to a capacity of 1,300. Then expansion of cafeteria, kitchen, new STEM and special ed space. And then construction of needed improvements at Woodbury Middle School. Currently, there's an old pool area where the pool, we no longer have a pool there, so it's a big open space that needs to be remodeled into educational space. And then the renovations and addition at Eastridge. So Eastridge, we need a construction of a previously planned addition, bringing that capacity to 2,300 students, because we know currently today Eastridge High School is over capacity by 400 students. Expand the cafeteria and construct a new additional CTE. And then Park and Woodbury do not need an addition, but they need construction of new cafeteria and kitchen and renovation of their CTE space at both Park and Woodbury. And then Woodbury also renovation of the media center. All right, Dan?
The remaining priorities after we gather feedback are elementary school additions, elementary bathrooms, land purchase, space for SoWashCo Alternative Learning Center, and space for the Next Step Transition Program. As we look at some of the dollar amounts on these, just note that with the tax impact appears to be about $1 per month on a median value home for every $25 million spent. Oops, I think I went backwards. So we look at our open seats before and after. So right now our elementaries have 1,663 open seats. Our middle schools have about 414, and our high schools are down by 249. The projected open seats in 5 years, we would still have 1,388 open seats at our 16 elementary schools, 60 in the middle school, and negative 300 at the high schools. With the additions added, we would have over 1,800 open seats in the elementary schools, about 400 at the middle school, about 500 at the high school. So what are the elementary school priorities? There are elementary school additions for about $31 million. That would be new classroom additions at those schools projected to exceed capacity, which are Bailey, Gray Cloud, Pine Hill, and Red Rock. And at those larger schools that exceed 700 students, we would construct new cafeteria and kitchen, as they only have 2 usable gym spaces. That'd be at Bailey and Gray Cloud. Without this construction, extensive boundary changes at elementary schools will occur. Elementary bathrooms would be construction of additional bathrooms at schools only containing a single set, which is our 60s schools, Crestview, Hillside, Pine Hill, Pullman, and Royal Oaks. Space for the SoWashCo Alternative Learning Center. Renovations would cost about $20 million. A new building would cost about $39 million. This would provide CTE space, gymnasium, kitchen, and cafeteria. This additional space is needed so we can add grades 9 and 10 to the program, to the school, I should say. Space for Next Step Transition programs for our students between the ages 18 and 21, estimated about $28 million for a new building. Right now we're leasing 2 spaces in 2 separate strip mall locations, one in Cottage Grove and one in Woodbury. We need space for additional students, and we'd like to combine the 2 locations into one, as is one transition program. And finally, the land purchase of $7 million. Purchase as a mean to control costs and purchase land for future needs while it's still available. We're estimating about 60 to 70 acres.
All right, so now is your opportunity for feedback. So as Dan mentioned earlier, we've already taken off 4 or 5 of the items that, based on feedback, there wasn't a lot of support for, from community, from staff, from all of you. So these are the items that we have left that we'd like input on. And so our first question, if you can move a slide here, Sean. So our first question that we want you to talk about in 3s, are there any items that you would remove from consideration from the new 5-year plan? And in front of you, you have cards, which with each item on a card, so you can lay the cards out and kind of take a look at all of them, and first look at, are there any items, and so now that you see the cost attached to them as well, are there any items you want to remove completely from us considering to put in the next plan.
And can I just add that by removing or setting cards to the side, it doesn't mean that there's not a need. It just means that when we create our longer facility plan, that it may be in a 6-year plan or a 7 or a 10-year plan, based on what happens through this facility plan. So it doesn't mean it's not needed. It's about staging and when it could occur.
Yes, so if we could talk in threes, so Simi, Sean, and Pat, the three of us, Julie, Sharon, and Katie, Anna, Eric, and Dan, and Melinda and Bob. Okay. All right, so let's take a few minutes to talk about what you might remove for this time around for this 5-year facility plan.
I've already filed.
Done, or do we need more time? How about 2 more minutes? Back. No, we're going to do this round. The next round is a different question. Yeah, well, they'll share out. Each one of them will count, and then we'll collect the cards. All right, I think we're ready to share out. Sounds like everybody had lots of fun in their conversation. All right. So I'd like each board member to go around and share the cards that they feel is not needed right now in this next 5-year plan. And Louise was like ready to go.
Sure. All right, so one of the cards I removed is the elementary school additions, and my thinking is looking at the number of open seats we currently have and that projection into the future. I just fiscally can't justify additions to elementary schools. I took out the middle school additions, again, looking at the current open seats that we have, and I know it's really tight that projection looking at maybe 60 in 5 years, but I'm still looking at use of that elementary space that is available as maybe one of the solutions for our middle schools. 2 others that I took out, both these programs, I think these are fantastic and I think they're important. I just don't think we have enough community support for the transition programs, Next Step and Pathways, and the alternative high school. And so I would take those out. I discussed these 2.
All right, we're gonna hold on these because that's the next question. All right, Sharon?
Katie and I are together. So Kate, we have the same outlook. Go ahead, girlfriend.
Should have known that was coming and had the microphone ready.
Should have taken bets.
I know. So we took out the space for the South Washington Alternative High School and space for Next Step, thinking that there's other opportunities within what we currently have to possibly get space for those programs. And again, also based on the community, these were lower on all of our lists.
That's it?
Yep, that's the only 2 removed.
Okay. Sure.
You want me to articulate? How about that? you want me to articulate what I think should be put aside for now, or?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. It's pretty simple for me. The elementary schools, we have plenty of seats. If we need to redistribute students, we should. The land purchase is a close one, but I don't think there's a tolerance for it to purchase land. As far as the next step and the alternative school, I don't think there's a community appetite to put forth money to that at this time. And the elementary school bathrooms, I guess, would fall into that same camp. We've been hanging on without them for this long, and I think we can continue to do that for now.
All right, thank you. Melinda.
Yeah, so I would take out the elementary schools and the bathrooms and, oh, sorry. And like we had spoken about.
It's on. Oh, no, now it's red.
There we go. Okay, and like we had spoken about before, making that a second question, we're letting the taxpayers decide. You know,
Which
do
one?
we
The
want
elementary?
the elementary? Do we want, you know, boundary changes, or do we want to put that extra money into, you know, updating our elementary schools? And I kind of also thought about doing that second question as far as on the ballot, with it being a, you know, A or B kind of thing, with if we did because it seemed to teachers and staff that the bathrooms is a really big situation. So thinking about either we have the money put into updating all the elementary schools. I don't remember the amount of that, like 31 million. Or doing the boundary changes, but maybe adding the 9 million onto that, which is only like 33 cents a month or something, so that way they could still get their bathrooms updated if it goes on to that point. As far as taking away, as much as I'm, you know, what a huge advocate I am for Next Step, with it being 28 million and with there not being a lot of support for that, what I would like to see, instead of putting that 28 million into that for a new building, is possibly looking for some different, like consolidated space, since we'd be getting rid of the rent of, you know, the Valley Creek Mall and then the one right here in Cottage Grove, and looking for a more suitable place for Next Step and Pathways to be together that's more centrally located to businesses, and that's a safer place for them. And then that wouldn't come from bond money. And then as far as the alternative high school, I think that's something we can wait on. And hopefully because land is one of the things I want, hopefully with that we could down the road do like a community learning center where we do Next Step and alternative learning center together.
All right, thank you. Simi.
So Melinda said a lot of what I was going to say. The two that I would remove would be space for Next Step and space for the alternative high school. And one of the things we talked about in this group was the potential to use, I agree it's very important to try to consolidate Next Step and Pathways into a safe and appropriate location. But we've been lease levying for it so far, and so if we continue to do that, it's sort of effectively the same cost as what we're doing now, right? And then for the alternative high school, you know, the space isn't maybe not the most ideal space, but it's still workable space. And Sean mentioned that maybe there's the potential to have some LTFM money that could be used toward updating stuff that's already been allocated. And so if we've got these pots of money that are appropriate for these types of expenditures, they don't necessarily need to be part of this plan. And then like Melinda, I would really like to see elementary additions as like a binary additions versus boundaries. The challenge I have is that, you know, the community says both that not changing boundaries is important, but that not spending money is important. And it would just be very helpful to just have the community decide what are they, you know, what is their tolerance, truly.
All right, thank you. Pat.
I have the same two, remove space for South Washington Alternative High School. Oh, sorry. The same two, space for South Washington Alternative High School removed and space for Next Step removed. And then I was thinking about middle school, but I also understand the dilemma that we have here is that the people don't want to change boundaries, but they also don't want to put any money into the elementaries. So it's a dilemma, and I think that needs to be a second question, just like Melinda said and we've mentioned before. So middle school, if we can't do that, my choice would be to take out middle school.
Right, that's our next activity.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
All right, thank you for that. So set those aside, knowing that you removed those. And so the next portion, what I'd like you to do, get back in your groups and talk about, Sean, can you, next slide. How would you like the priorities that are left to be presented to the community as far as questions? So now have the conversation with what you have left that you want to present to our community in the next 5-year plan. We'll take about 5-10 minutes to do that.
I have a question.
Yep, yep.
How much money do we have to get to?
It's up to you.
Can I ask us to be thoughtful about that question, because we know what the community survey said, and in summary, it was $10 to $12. But if my parents gave me $10 and I went to the grocery store, I probably wanted to spend all $10. But we have to be really thoughtful about what's going on in our community and what our community has said in terms of tax tolerance, in terms of knowing that our cities will also be on the ballot. And so I don't know if there's a specific line that we want to work up to. I think it really should go back to the needs that we really need right now and how can we best address those. And we, of course, will be bringing forward the total dollar amount. But I feel like in our economy, and just as we watch what's happened with 3M this week, gas prices, there's just a number of things, inflation. I think we just always need to be thinking about that as it relates to what we really, really need as a school district. So what the survey said was approximately $10 to $12.
All right, so go ahead and talk about how you would present these to the community.
Right, but it was, one of those things was like, well, and then they wouldn't.
All right, so now I'd like you to share out, how would you like these priorities presented to the community, the priority sets you have left? You want to start again?
We'll go this way. Okay, after me. Here we go.
And just so you know, we're doing joint.
I like being last because everybody said everything I would have said.
Okay. What I would put in question one are the top priorities that showed up in the community feedback and the staff feedback and our greatest need right now, which is the secured entrances and the high school additions. And that is all I would put on question one. I would do the elementary bathrooms as a question two, again, because of what it gives us for future options, the health concerns. It also, looking at the community feedback, there's a 3 to 2, like approval rating, for lack of a better word, on that. The staff is even higher. And then I would make the land purchase totally its own question, partly because it's so unique from everything else, and there isn't a direct use of it. We can't go on the ballot and say we need this land and this is what we're going to do with it right now. So I think that puts it further down the road, and I would make it a separate question.
Great, thank you.
Okay, I have the same high school additions and secured high school additions and secured entrances. Also, I put elementary school bathrooms in there and the land purchase.
In question one.
And all of it. And the middle school additions, I'd put all of that in one, and then elementary, its own question, and let them decide if they're going to have boundary changes or not.
So second question, elementary school additions or boundary changes?
Right.
All right, Timmy?
So my first question would include the secured entrances, the high school additions, the middle school additions. I would include land purchase here. One of the concerns I have is that in 5 years, there isn't going to be either affordable land or a parcel of land that is going to work for what a school needs, right? And I know that as land becomes more scarce, it becomes more expensive, right? So I would worry that if we don't prioritize it now, we'll be kicking ourselves later, or a future board will be kicking us later. And then as a second question, I would have the elementary school additions. And like I said, I think community members have given us basically two things that aren't workable in tandem, which is that don't spend money and don't change boundaries. And so it would be really helpful to understand when push comes to shove, which would they rather we do.
All right, thank you. Melinda?
Yeah, so I would put question one. I would do the top 3 things that were in both the community and the staff survey, and that's the security, the high school additions, and the middle school additions. And then I would add the land purchase onto that, with it just being a $7 million. That's, gosh, like 30 cents a month. And then, land is something that's always going to appreciate, never depreciate. We could always lease it if we needed to until we're ready to build something on it. Land is becoming more scarce, like Simi said, and I just think it's something that we really need to invest into the future of our district by securing some land before all the property builders and businesses swipe it up. And then, like I said before, I would have a second question with the elementary schools to let the taxpayers decide that.
All right. Eric?
I would, upon further thinking, just get rid of the middle school additions, which leaves us with just the high school and secured entrances. I would put it in one question, make it very simple. Do you want to approve of secured entrances and high school additions? Yes or no? As far as the land purchase goes, I think the thoughts that are going around, I do agree with. I think that it would be important for us to purchase that, and if people are in favor of it, great. So if you want to put it on the ballot, fine. I think it would overall be better.
Question one, do you think, Leanne?
I would make it a
Separate question.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so me and Sharon. So we have the secured entrances, the middle school additions, and the high school additions. In discussion about the middle school additions, yes, there are 60 open seats, but that's over 4 middle schools. So if it was packaged nicely, it would be like 15 seats. And as we know, kids come and go and move and do whatever, and it would be very easy for us to fill those 60 seats. And plus, I worry about, again, extensive boundary changes because we know Oatman is pretty full and there's a lot of building going on near and boundary to go to Oatman. So that's why we decided to leave that in question 1. Question 2 was our elementary school additions, the elementary school bathrooms, and we did throw in the land purchase in there. And again, the same thing, we're going to have those boundaries. The community can look at the boundaries and they can decide, do we want the boundary changes or do we want the elementary school additions? And really the reason for 2 questions is whenever you put in a 3rd question, the community is always like, which one's your throwaway question? Which one don't you need? Mm-hmm. And when we look at everything we have here, there is no throwaway.
And one of the other things we talked about too is maybe consolidate some of this, how we word it. So it's not such a, question 1, question 2, question 3, and then second part, question 1, question 2. So if we could narrow it and make it very specific, I think it would be much better. Got this thing on too.
Around 137?
Where was land?
Where was land in your?
Land is in our second question.
So just 2 questions. Can you repeat what was in the second question for you guys?
Elementary school additions, the elementary school bathrooms, and the land purchase.
Okay. Additions, bathrooms, land. Okay. All right, thank you. And so we will add all of this feedback into our information we're using as we guide the final plan that we'll present to you, and I'll show you that timeline here shortly. All right, so we have one more community meeting on Tuesday, May 23rd at East Ridge High School. So please let people know anyone in the community is welcome to come to that to see what we are going to propose for our final plan and give us feedback on that. And then here is our overall plan from here till June. So we're going to continue to gather feedback on this final plan from staff and community. We're presenting information to you today. We'll be back again on May 18th. And then on June 1st, we'll have a firm final plan and then ask for your approval on June 15th at the business meeting.
And Christine, one thing that you didn't add that I know that you know is that for this last community meeting, we're actually going to make sure that the presentation is taped and online so that we will have the feedback form right there. So we will try to reach out and get as much feedback for the board before we go into that final decision. Mm-hmm. We have not done that. Christine did share that somebody posted it online, which was absolutely okay. But for this last review, it's just important when we go into community meetings to understand the reason the presentations are built this way is because some people come in at community meeting 2, some come in at 3. And so we try to make sure that these presentations encapsulate all of the information that has led us to where we are today.
So I had a question. I was going to ask about, I've seen going around on some social media, a survey coming up. Is that something that
I think the survey was the survey from our second community meeting. And so when individuals attended an in-person community meeting, there was always an ask. And the ask or the survey they had to do is how we generated the feedback that you saw on the red and the blue. And that same survey was done with staff and people within the district. So they're all taking the same survey. And so for this third one, we will tape and record the presentation so people can watch it and then complete the feedback form.
All right, and again, a reminder, all of this information is at this website, Facility Planning, all the demographics, and any information we've gathered so far. All right, thank you.
Sean, if you took notes, and as Sharon is figuring out her microphone, I do want to make sure that people around this table know the amount of time that people like Christine and Sean and Dan Hines and Kyle Euchre are putting in on our leadership team as we work to gather the feedback, produce the surveys, get the presentations ready. Our timeline and our turnaround loops are quick, but there's just a great team working behind the scenes to gather the feedback to make sure that we're as transparent about what we're gathering with our next group that we go out to. So thank you to that group. Okay, I may have told Sharon, I heard they might have samples tonight. Sorry to disappoint.
Oh, Dunkers, pizza, a fiestada. We'll work on a custom order for the next one.
We will, for sure.
So tonight we'll start, has been into budget season and the original budget season. So tonight we'll hear from Nutrition Services and their budget for next year. And after that, Bob Lawrence will do the community services budget. So with that, we'll have Wendy Peterson, our Director of School Nutrition, take over.
I'm going to defer to Bobby Joe. She's going to kick us off.
All right, good evening, school board members, Superintendent Nielsen, and Executive Cabinet. We are here tonight and very excited to present our nutrition services budget. And to start on a high note, there's this awesome video. Thank you to Communications for pulling this together. It's a video about our department, and it is very touching, I would say. May give you some tears. But it's really timely, too, because tomorrow is the National School Lunch Hero Day. So I think this video speaks for itself.
I would say my favorite part of lunch is sitting with my friends, also just talking with the staff members because it's really fun just to talk with them.
Todos los trabajadores en el almuerzo son muy amables, pero me gusta hablar con Naima porque es muy amable y divertido hablar con.
When we come in, because I have 2 assistant managers, one of them does breakfast, and myself and the other one, we do prep, put orders away, and we have the music jamming. When the kids come through for breakfast, we just keep on rolling, prepping. Then the other part-timers come in, and then when the kids come in for lunch, that's fun too because they're funny, they're interesting, and they like our food, and we have good meals here.
I think a lot of people think we have microwaves in the back and we're just heating and serving and that's how we're preparing. But actually it's a lot more involved than that.
So I prepare food according to the menus that we are given by the directors at DSE, and then prep what I need to the day before to make sure that I have enough food. I cook it, I get it all set and put it out on the line for the other people to serve. Well, they really like mini corn dogs, and they like chicken day.
I mean, tortellini today. The chicken patties are kind of a normal lunch, but like when we have homemade cheeseburger pizza, I like doing that.
My favorite school lunch is probably the walking taco. Irresistible orange chicken or a walking taco.
Irresistible orange chicken. Ooh, I would say the walking tacos. All with the salsa. They make it, you got the Doritos and then you got the taco. Orange chicken or Italian dunkers.
Why you would want to work here in nutrition services, there's lots of reasons. The kids, I mean, it really comes down to when you come here every day and feed them, it is amazing. And you get to see the smile on their face and the excitement in the cafeteria, and that's what it's about.
I always felt at home here. I love my job, I love my coworkers, and we have such a good team. And I'm going to retire from here and have a good pension, and I love being a lunch lady.
I absolutely love this job. There's nothing more rewarding. There's nothing the hours are great. The days off are great. Being here with the kids are great. It goes by so fast, you don't even feel like you're here for 4 hours half the day. It's just, I don't know, it's fun. And working with so many different people and getting to know so many different people, it's just great. Like, I love my job. I have not had a job like this that I've absolutely loved ever. And my best friend tells me, she's like, you're very lucky to say that. Yeah, I am. And I'm proud to say it. I would apply for South Washington County Schools 1,000,000 times over again.
So it was really fun to make that video, and we couldn't have picked better staff.
Why doesn't every home in the U.S. have solar panels? The reason is not about some.
And now let's talk about solar panels.
And Bobby's side job is selling solar panels.
Oh my gosh, it really is. It really is.
Way to work it in.
I know. I really needed that laugh. That was good. But it was really fun to work with that video, and really a huge thank you to your communications team for making us feel comfortable, especially for us new people doing that. So it was good. There was a couple timeouts. So the next slide here, we have our graph as to who our office staff are here at the DSC. So of course you have Wendy, who is the boss, and then there's myself, and then I also want to introduce Carrie, who is in the audience. So she is newly on board as of December, and so we were running short an administrator for over 2 years, so we finally hired someone on who is amazing, and she really complements our team very well. So welcome to Carrie, and we're excited to have her. And then we also hired a dietitian to help me with support our special diets and the wellness piece, because all year long we're still getting questions or having to do special menus for allergy kids. And then we have a purchasing person, Colleen, who's our office coordinator, Jennifer is our tech person, and Mary works with payroll and some of those things. So we have a really great group back there. It's always fun to come to work, and we're a good team. We complement each other very well. So the next slide here you will see is our programs that we are administering. So of course, next school year we will be doing the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail what it will entail. I'm sure you've heard that we will have free meals for all students, whether they're paid, free, or reduced. Over the summer here, for our summer school programs, so your Hillside, Middleton, Newport, Cottage Grove Middle, we will also be running the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program, because this funding or the free meals will start in July. So we can start feeding all of those kids that attend for free. So that would be really great. For an open site, we are going to do Crestview for the community to come in and have free meals. So we will be providing both breakfast and lunch for children to come in. And so this site was picked because of the community eligibility, which means it was based off of free and reduced percentages. So it's over 50% free and reduced. So again, we could operate at that site. So we'll be having the open site available for all families starting June 12th, and we'll run it through August 25th, Monday through Friday. Then we have Kids Club, and we'll be catering for them. So we have the 4 sites there: Bailey, Gray Cloud, Liberty Ridge, and Red Rock. So we'll have some staff working there as well, June 12th through August 25th. The next slide here we have, I'll just explain a couple of things. The Keep Kids Fed Act of 2022. So that is what we are currently operating under, and it is set to expire on June 30th. So what this means for us is that our increased reimbursement rate, as you see there, of 40 cents for lunch and 15 cents for breakfast will go away. So when Wendy talks about our budget in the upcoming slides, we did not factor that extra 40 cents and 15 cents in our budget, because we don't know what's going to happen. They could continue it, it could increase, or it'll go away. It's anyone's guess. So worst case scenario we went with. Free school meals for kids program. This was a bill that was signed into law on March 17th. So Governor Walz, it's the free meals for all students starting July 1st. So the rules to this is you have to operate National School Breakfast and Lunch, which we do. So we will be running that for next year and preparing ourselves for what's to come. The next slide here, you'll see we've done these slides with you for years now. I did keep a lot of our pre-COVID numbers in here too, so there's a lot of lines on this graph, but I think it's important. So as you can see, this school year, we're the bluish purple line up there, and so we've been averaging about 11,100 meals or lunches a day. When we were operating free meals the last time, so 21-22 school year, the red line, we are running at about 11,800 kids eating with us. So as we are looking at our projections for the upcoming school year, we feel pretty confident it'll be around that 11,800 again. And then compared to pre-COVID, I do feel that we've been able to capture some of those kids that didn't eat with us before. So we've kind of seen a little uptick because of that. So thanks to COVID and parents not wanting to make meals for their kids, I think we captured some of them, so which is good news. And yeah, so that's the lunch. And then breakfast. Right now we are lower. During COVID and the free meals particularly, we saw a huge jump. And partially this is from, I mean, it's good, it's another free meal, but we also had a lot of schools bringing classrooms of kids down to our cafeterias. So we were really struggling with that breakfast and then the turnaround to lunch. So that was very rough. And but that's where the uptick was. So this current school year, we are averaging about 1960 breakfasts per day. And then when it was free, it was about 3977. So moving forward next school year, we do feel that we will have an increase compared to this year, but not as high as COVID. Because right now we do not have the staffing model that we could have classrooms in schools full of kids coming down to eat with us. We just don't have the manpower to pull it off. So it's really going to be strategic where we are pushing kids who really need the breakfast to come down. Obviously, we will feed you. But if it's you were at home, you ate a breakfast already, or going for a second breakfast or third, those are the ones like, maybe, and it's going in the garbage. Those are the ones that maybe we want to hold back on just to help with our staffing. All right, and then a la carte sales. So again, we're running at about $9,900 a day on average. So very much lower than our pre-COVID numbers. And there's a couple reasons for that. Back then, prior to COVID, we had Diversified, which was our big snack company, but they went out of business when the pandemic hit. In these last couple years, we just haven't had the ability to sell extra a la carte. So our staff we've been trying to do the basics. Let's feed the reimbursable meal and not do all the extras because we just don't have the manpower to do so, or the product availability, to be honest with you too. So we're projecting a little bit more next year in a la carte revenue because our main vendor will be bringing in some of our top sellers of a la carte, or we're hoping to. And then we're hoping to staff up as well at some of our high schools because they are really the ones that have not been getting the a la carte just because we don't have the staff to do the a la carte rooms. So there's that.
You can have mine. Thank you. All right, so looking at budget assumptions for next year, obviously like we've discussed, we are making the assumption that all meals will be free and that they will be reimbursed by the state of Minnesota without the 40 cents for lunch and the 15 cents for breakfast. The difference is in that we need to make the difference between what we were doing during COVID There were a lot of waivers that were involved with COVID. This is just reimbursement of meals. And so this is where we have to make the distinction between the two. And so students, we can't have special programs going on, delivery to the classroom, checklists. We were doing at one point clicker counts. None of those things apply any longer. It's just simply that those meals are being reimbursed by the state of Minnesota. Like Bobby just mentioned, our a la carte revenue, we're hoping to expand and increase the products and be able to expand the offerings. And one thing I wanted to make everyone clear on is that a la carte purchases means anything outside of that reimbursable meal. And so if a student comes up and wants a second cheeseburger, that's an a la carte purchase. If a cold luncher brings their lunch from home and they simply buy a milk, that's an a la carte purchase. So that revenue and sales that are generated by that, it encompasses all of those items. Food costs, we're going with an inflationary increase above and beyond what we're seeing this year of an additional 5%. We went with inflationary adjustments for salaries, obviously an increase in what we're paying for benefits through health, medical, dental, all of those different items. And then we had to do a rough guess on our chargebacks, which is the amount that we pay back to the district. It's based off of an indirect cost rate, but that rate is not out yet. And so based off of a graph that we're hoping we're somewhat accurate on, we went with a 9% rate. We thought that we would see more of a 6 to 9% this year, but it did go back to back 14%, which means we as a department had to pay back hundreds of thousands of dollars more to the district in those chargeback amounts. And so this was just a best guess estimate for next year. So one thing that we wanted to point out is our costs and looking at our costs for the last couple years. And so you'll notice that the 2 primary years of COVID are left out because, as all of you know, we were barely serving anyone. We had our staff furloughed, and so we stripped those numbers out. But the controllable cost column, the middle column, is simply your labor and your food cost. And so pre-COVID, we were at about 64% cost compared to revenue. 2022, with all of the free meals, we hadn't seen a huge uptick in inflation yet. We were running about 57%, and this year we are sitting at 73%. And so with our increase in overall labor percent, as well as a dramatic increase in food costs, which I'm sure you all are aware because everybody goes to the grocery store, we're seeing our costs skyrocket dramatically. We're down about 6% in lunch revenue and about 50% in breakfast, but we're still up 21% in overall expenditures for our food. So it's a pretty difficult situation to try to manage. So moving into our overall revenue, you've got our proposed for 22-23, and then we did our adjusted for this year. So we just went down ever so slightly in what we're expecting to do for revenue. But for next year, obviously you'll see a rather large increase. You're going to see an increase in our breakfast as well as our increase in a lunch. And this is coming in at that being reimbursed at the free rate is what the state of Minnesota is doing. So even though it's 40 cents less, it's still more than what we're currently being reimbursed for the reimbursement with the paid. And so that's why you're going to see an uptick. Plus, we do think that a lot of those kids that we lost will get back. And an overall increase in a la carte revenue for about $12,500,000 in our revenue expected for next year. However, in looking at our expenses, we're seeing an uptick in salaries. We are seeing, obviously, an uptick in fringe benefits. So we went with about an 8% increase in salaries. This isn't only due to wage increase, but hopefully we will have more employees next year. And so we'll be spending more in overall salaries. About a 10% increase in fringe. We did decrease our purchase service, and the biggest reason for this is that when families put money into School Cafe, we cover that credit card fee, so that isn't pushed over to the families because we want to encourage families to utilize that service. And so that's going to save us about $120,000, $130,000 because families will only be putting in for a la carte purchases. They will not have to put in for lunch for next year. So that's why you're seeing the decrease there. We're seeing an overall increase of food and supplies, partially due to that inflationary increase like we discussed, but also more breakfast, more lunch going out the door. Still a rather large amount put into equipment, but I do want to just remind everybody, it's not like going to Menards to buy a dishwasher. We're putting in a new dishwasher at Cottage Grove Middle this summer, $75,000. We replaced 2 walk-in coolers last year, $250,000. And so during the 2 years that we were primarily had all of the decrease from COVID, all spending came to a halt. If we continue to not do upkeep on our kitchens, we will get to the point, just like we see in all the buildings, that it's very, very difficult to recover. And so we're needing to sink some money to kind of catch up for those years. And so looking at the overall detailed financial summary, like we discussed, we're looking at about $12,500,000 in revenue minus our expenditures for a fund balance decrease of $328,000. What I want to make sure everybody is understanding when it comes to this is if they extend the 40 cents for lunch and the 15 cents for breakfast, it is a difference of about $900,000. So this is where presenting this budget got really difficult, because where are we going to come in at? The problem with the federal government is they aren't going to come out with reimbursement rates till July or August. Our indirect cost rate will probably come out sometime early summer, and so those 2 numbers alone could dramatically swing our overall financial summary. The good news is that because of how financially responsible the cook managers were with their expenditures and how well they ran their kitchens last year, we were sitting on a rather large fund balance. And so you'll see that in the next slide, where it talks about the overall situation. Massive uptick that you saw. And then for this year, we're talking about a $1.2 million loss. That is due to that 14% rate that we have to pay back for chargebacks. Came in about, I'm going to say, $450,000 higher, and then we did do an adjustment for expenditures. We also have to keep within certain parameters for the state of Minnesota, and we can't sit on too high of a fund balance, so that was a little bit of an intentional spend down. And then again, with next year, if we do a $300,000 loss, we'll still be at about $1.4 million in our fund balance. However, if we do get that extra reimbursement, we're going to sit at about a 15% fund balance. We are hopeful, because our association has been lobbying very hard in DC, expressing that this isn't a South Washington County Schools issue. This is an issue across the nation with overall problems with the economy and inflation issues that everybody is facing. And so they have been lobbying very hard to not only keep the money that was coming through the act that is expected to expire this year, but not only do they need to keep it, they need to drastically raise that. And so it's anybody's game kind of where we're really going to come in at, but we're hopeful that we will be receiving at least similar to what we did this year. We wanted to present a worst case scenario, hoping that we can do an adjustment and all of us will be very, very pleased. But that's kind of where we sit in looking at, if that funding doesn't come through from the federal government. And since the state is going to match that amount through the feds, that's where we were required to go with those numbers. And so again, the overall financial is a fund balance decrease of about $300,000 with a projected year-end fund balance of $1.4 million, or 11% in our fund balance after next year. Questions?
Yeah, I do. So first question, we used to raise money, or raise the fee. So if this free lunch, we don't have any other way for you to raise money.
Correct. Since we are completely self-sufficient and separate from the general fund, all of our revenue is generated by, reimbursement rates and paid families. Now we're solely going off of reimbursement rates. It's going to be absolutely critical that we have the staffing and the manpower to be able to not only service breakfast and lunch, but to hopefully be able to generate more in a la carte revenue.
Yeah. And then, so my next question is, because I know during COVID, there were some issues with the reimbursable meal if a kid didn't grab something, then they were charged. Is it the same?
It is.
So
Yes.
So we
Yes.
have to make sure that the kids take.
Correct. Yep. And so our cashiers do the end of line check where they're checking every tray that comes down the line. And if students do not have what they need on their tray, they are sent back.
Okay.
If students refuse, which a lot of times you'll see at the high school level, they know if they don't want that fruit or veggie, they refuse, they then are told that we have to charge them a la carte pricing. Of course, we try to flip that into a reimbursable meal wherever possible. And so often we'll have like craisins or something at the end, and they know, just share it with a friend, whatever, because we will tell them this is free. And so if you take this, it's now free. If not, I have to charge you, which is what we did last year. And so all of the restrictions and the rules that were set up prior to that, they are still going to be in place for next year.
Because my kid did that, and she said, I'm still going to refuse. And I said, then you're paying for your food.
Exactly.
No, I like that the a la carte is staying. I mean, I have a son that anywhere from $5 to $10 a day that he eats. So he really likes the food. So obviously the a la carte not having as much is not affecting middle school boys. But
and what we've seen is as long as we have second entrees for kids to take, often they're pretty satisfied with that, but you've got a lot of students that are in extracurricular activities. It doesn't really work to stick a cheeseburger in your back pocket or in your backpack. So they need those snack items because they might be at school until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And so this really truly is a service. It's limited at the elementary, it expands at the middle school, and it gets even broader at the high school. And so we have a la carte rooms that are now built into every middle school. The high schools, I mean, because of space issues, they've kind of tried to create a room, but many of those rooms have not been open the majority of the year, and we still pulled in about $1.5 million just in those extra items. If we have the snack items and things available to sell and the manpower to do so, we know that that's just going to boost our overall financial outlook.
so for the breakfast, then, are they going to have that option of the grab and go as a way to try and, since we don't have the staff, and so that
and
those
the
kids
problem,
can have
the problem more at breakfast is that a lot of our schools, there's one person in the building. And so when we had, let's say, a medium-sized elementary school and every classroom was coming down, you're trying to feed 400 students with one person. And so it was very challenging. And the majority of our staff members are parents who are responsible for getting their kids on the bus, and then they work for us over the lunch hour. They're unavailable in the morning. And so we were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And so we do still have to meet certain items that they take at breakfast. We're going to try to make it as efficient as possible, but we're going to put a lot of emphasis on the communications department to help us out. And so we really need the messaging. And what the governor said is, this program is for people who need it. And so what we saw last year when it was free is students would come down with their teacher, they've already eaten, they would look in the bag, they might find one item that they want, and the rest goes in the trash. And we can't really do much about food waste when they're doing things like that, so we want the families to know, we're here, we're happy to service you and your students, but it really needs to be a program that's utilized by those who want to take advantage of it.
Are there, oh, I just had one, well, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, you never have one. My question kind of was to piggyback on what you were just talking about. So I just hate all the idea of this wasted food. Is there a box or something where students can, on their own time, throw in like their craisins that are unopened or their apple that hasn't been touched or anything that it can at least be donated or used for kids after school snacks or anything?
All right, so we've done share tables in the past, and we got rid of them because we've had a few situations where kids went into anaphylactic reactions because they took something out of that box that was against their allergens. And then we also had a situation where kids were licking apples and putting it back in the bin. And we just don't have the manpower to do them right. You really need someone there to like wash and rinse off those fruits and veggies, make sure they weren't tampered with. I mean, it's been tricky. And then the allergen piece, we just felt it wasn't worth the risk between norovirus on one end and an allergen on the other.
And were we able to go back to the reusable trays, or are we just still too short-staffed?
Well, some schools are doing it, and they'll kind of, it just depends on their staffing though. But we do have buildings that are, and if they're able to and they have the manpower to do so, we encourage it. Or even if it's for half of the classes, the other half, you do the compostable.
Just to give you an idea, Melinda, on average, we've been down about 15 employees. We have about 140. We're down about 15 employees that we need to hire. And for instance, tomorrow, we have 15 absences already knowing that today. So we're down 30 employees out of 140. And so that's the easiest thing to go away is the washing of the trays. And it's actually the main thing that keeps people from working here is because it is so physical. And washing, say, 1,200, 1,500 trays at Eastridge, it just was so off-putting. And so we had to kind of make a, and and we lost like 1,200 trays in 1 year by students throwing them in the trash. So we had to make a decision on what was in the best interest of the staff members, and that was the first thing to go. So.
And I forgot to mention too, like with the breakfast piece, we're gonna pilot at one school hiring a morning person. We're gonna try it and see if we can't get a staff person in so that maybe they can pair that with a para lunch recess job in the middle of the day. So if for those buildings, we're gonna try and see what happens.
So for your a la carte pricing, so when someone goes to get doubles, do we have any like regulatory restrictions on what we can charge for doubles? Okay.
Yeah, there's actually a minimum amount that's mandated by the federal government, and so it is rather extreme, but we have to charge that minimum base amount.
Okay. And so is the amount that we charge for the doubles, I mean, does that go toward, is that helpful in terms of like hitting your profit target, so to speak?
Yes, yeah, it is. Yep, it takes into account labor, food costs, all of it to generate that meal.
Okay. And then when you say that the federal government is not going to determine the reimbursement rate until July or August, so that means that they would have to go retroactively to July 1st, or do they do it for like September 1st on, or how does that work?
They're going to probably have to retro it. The Crestview site runs a different program, so it's very confusing. They run a summer program that's reimbursed at a different rate, different funding than the other schools, and so typically they will go back.
And we don't do our claims right away either, so I think it's usually 30 to 60 days. It's
After.
not uncommon to be 60 days out.
And so we can capture whatever that new rate is, file for our claims, and not have to do an adjustment.
Okay, so like you send like July 1st, you'll send it in like September 1st or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I guess this is more of a question for Dan. I know we have a lot of funding or stuff that is sort of determined by the free and reduced lunch rate, right? Like that's where like ESSER funding and stuff came from. And so has the state provided any guidance about how we can mitigate the potential for people not doing paperwork for free and reduced lunch?
Well, they put in as a pilot last year, and it'll probably stay forever, a direct certification. So maybe 75% of our qualified, eligible families are directly certified through, it's coming right from DHS, I believe.
Yeah, it's a Medicaid. So up until last year, Medicaid was not a qualifier for direct certification, but it was this current year. And so we saw, that's why you'll see the large uptick when they did the breakdown of demographics. You saw that it was 25% free and reduced. Historically, it's been 18. And that was due to those Medicaid families that are direct cert. However, they do have the 2-year hold harmless.
Right, and the other issue is that there's still 25% of our certifications or eligibilities that have to be done through the old way, through the forms, and with everybody free, there's no, not a big incentive, at least on the elementary level. There's somewhat of an incentive on other fees that they get a break on for the educational benefits, so no, they don't have an answer right now. They're still doing compensatory dollars based on the free and reduced counts. they know they need to come up with something, they just haven't yet.
I think for part of that too, I mean, we've got a big communications plan sort of planned around that, so that, because we know that that's coming and we know that's a big part of it. So we've already been sort of working with some other people we do videos with and things like that to try to make sure that our families know that we still need them.
Sharon, before you close up, can I just do a big shout out to our entire staff? I think one of our favorite spots to go when we're out in schools is our cafeterias. And this past week I was out, and literally the strawberries we were serving, I can't find them in the grocery store, but these strawberries were as big as my heart. And I'm not exaggerating. And it's so great to go into our cafeterias and see fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and students eating salad. It's just incredible. And through all of this, all the pain and the tears, we really have continued to hold a high standard. And we see that with the budget as we watch us spend down, because food costs are up, labor costs are up, all of those things. But while the quality may not be perfect, and it's maybe not the pre-COVID, I think we can be very proud of what we put out to our students every day. And nutrition services staff does an incredible job. Our leadership team work tirelessly every day. Because we know how important it is to learning that kids are fed. So thank you to you, thank you, Carrie, and thank you to your entire team.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I know.
Thank you.
The following Thursday, next time, I will. Yeah, yeah, there's that too. That oven's fun too, and I'm really not good at making.
Go right ahead. Okay. Well, thank you. Good evening. Well, I don't have a video. Thanks, Sean, to start me off. But I do. I'm not as funny as Dan. I'm more of a trivia guy, so I am going to start with a trivia question. What do you call a pack of rhinos? What's the appropriate name? I don't know what the scientific name for a group of rhinos called. Anybody know? This may think more of my wait time. It's not a herd. Nope. Close. It's a crash of rhinos. Do you know why it's a crash of rhinos? Because rhinoceros can run 30 to 31 miles an hour, but they can only see 30 meters in front of their face. But that's okay, because they're a rhinoceros, right? They're prepared for whatever's ahead. And so when I think of that analogy and the community budget that I'm going to talk about tonight is, with community ed, we want to be prepared for what's ahead. And it's been, as you know, some lean years the last few years through the pandemic. And because the majority of our funding comes through fees, we had to make some really tough decisions. And when Julie and I met a couple years ago, I remember her telling me it's going to take 3 to 5 years to build this back up again and build back programming. And so the last couple of budget cycles I've brought to you and really had some depressing, just holding it together budgets. And this one's the first one that I feel like we're finally, equipped to move forward. And so and we want to be innovative and responsive to community needs, and we're just not able to do that when we don't have the appropriate funding. So as I go through this, you can think of the rhino analogy and where we are preparing for what's ahead. So to start with, this is a summary. I suppose I could just show you this and that's my presentation and be done, but we'll get a little bit deeper into that. But what you'll see here is what was revised when Dan brought the revised budgets a couple of months ago. And you can see that this year we're back up there. Our revenue is getting closer to our pre-pandemic numbers, nearly $14.5 million. Our expenses just shy of $14 million, and so that's going to leave us with a healthy net result, which will add to our fund balance, help us get prepared. And then looking ahead to this next year, being a little bit more conservative, seeing budgeting for a slight increase in revenue. Those are some of the unknowns because it is fee-based. We're basing our predictions off of our current reality of what we're seeing this year as far as participation numbers, but hoping that that'll continue to grow. And then you'll see there is an increase in expenditures, and that's a little bit more because we know that there are cost increases with staffing, salaries increasing with some new costs. So this is a conservative budget in that we're trying to underestimate our revenues, overestimate expenditures, which even in that case results in a $562,000 net result. So just a comparison, I think the budget I proposed a year ago had about just shy of a $200,000. So you can see continuing to be frugal in how we spend, but also aggressive in how we promote has led to a successful year this year, and we're hoping to see the same next year. And so again, we're working to build back that fund balance. Over the pandemic, our pre-pandemic fund balance was completely spent to the point where there was one year where the general fund had to support us to get us through the year. And so we know our participants are coming back. We know that the need is still out there, and so we're equipping ourselves to address and meet that need. So here's a list of our program areas, and I didn't have pizza. I did hear the same rumor that there might be pizza, so I didn't want to come empty-handed. So in front of you, you'll see some of the items that we share when we go out to promote our programs. Because we are more entrepreneurial in our department, and we rely on participation, we do have some items, and you might see those. You might, if you're at the Woodbury Expo or the Cottage Grove Showcase, we had those there. We also will, when the district and the schoolie buses and the different parades in our 4 communities this summer, you might get some of those or pass some out, or the community could get some of these. So sharing that, and then the information in that packet goes a little bit more in depth into our different program areas. Again, some promotional materials that we use. And for the public, the vast public in the audience, I do have some extras over on the table. Help yourself. I hope Zach gets back in time, because I know there's chip clips over there, and so I did bring some extras, and for those watching at home, show up at a parade. Oh, and the one thing you don't have in front of you, because I didn't have enough for everybody, this is the hot item, so we only have a few left at the expos. I don't know exactly what it is. It's Sean was telling me.
Did you freeze it?
You freeze it or you heat it, and then it's a what? A boo-boo healer. So there are some of those on the table as well. So when we look at our programs and what's up there, this is really where community ed has evolved over the course of 50 years. So 50 years ago is when legislation first came into effect in Minnesota. It started with the Lighted Schoolhouse Symposium with Governor Levander, who said, what do we have across the state where we can meet needs within our communities? And every community has a public school district that serves them. So funding started coming into public schools in 1972-73 school year. And not all of these programs are there, but over the 50 years, multiple programs grew within the community ed departments. Every department's a little bit different based on the unique needs within their community. This is what we have to offer, and I'll say our 50th anniversary for South Washington County Schools is actually next year. We were not one of the first 12 districts to adopt community education when that funding came available. It took us a year to catch up, and then we adopted it. So we can celebrate a year from now with pizza or walking tacos. I'm not sure which. But unfortunately, if you go to this next slide, this is showing a little bit of the effect of the pandemic. And the areas that are grayed out, we still offer, but we offer at a reduced capacity. And the areas that are crossed out, we were some of those cuts that had to be made that we still haven't quite been able to bring back. We're hopeful to in various ways. But then there's also blank space on that. Like, what are the other needs that we know are here now post-pandemic, or that were here before and we maybe didn't have the capacity to meet those? So really being really strategic and thoughtful, which is why even though you see that we've been resulting in positive budgets and adding to our fund balance, we haven't added a whole lot back purposefully, because we want to bulk up like that rhino so we can address what's ahead and not just add back just because everything that we offered was of value. Everything that we cut is still of value, and so how do we offer that? So and then the other thing that's addressing some of the growth back is we don't have the staffing. So some of it is that we don't have finding staff for some of our programs, and some of the issue is we don't have the coordinators in place to coordinate the program. So that's why we're not able to bring that back. But as the revenue comes back, so does the opportunity to meet those needs. So the next few slides, I'm going to look at some participation trends just to get you a sense of, again, not only how the pandemic impacted us, but where we're at and how quickly we've been able to come back in some areas. And so you'll see that prior to 2020, so from 2015 to 2019, we saw a nice steady growth within our youth recreation and enrichment. So this is everything from after-school programming, like enrichment classes in the elementary schools, middle schools, just the rec classes, camps and clinics in the summer are really big, so that's all included in here. But these are our fee-based programs, not like our early childhood or our school-age childcare. This is our fee-based programs. And so you can see that obviously 21 and 2021 was really challenging because we didn't offer as much. And then 22, we started to come back. And then if you look at 23, that's as of May 1st. So you can see we're already at our numbers from last year, pretty equal. And we still have a busy month of May and June left in our fiscal year. So I anticipate we'll see another 2,500 to 3,000 registrations come in. So we'll be back, not quite to our 2019 numbers, but getting really close. And so that is just an indication of, again, the desire that's out there, and families and parents were ready to send their kids back pretty quickly. So that's been positive. The next one is not quite as positive in the sense that this is our adult recreation and enrichment. Again, this is what I think traditionally people think of as community ed, as sort of the catalog or that they get, and it's that evening classes or the fitness class that you might try. And you can see that the trend opposite of youth was actually going down over the course of 2015 to 2019. 2019 had a little bit of a spike, but you can see year over year it was starting to trend downward. And that wasn't just South Washington County. That's really across the state of Minnesota we see that. And really that comes a lot of reasons. And one of them being that just the increase of access. Like I'm a YouTube mechanic, right? Like if I need to fix my car, I go to YouTube and then I figure it out. And so some of those classes that really were popular 10 or 15 years ago just don't fill because there's other options, including what's available online. So we're really, even before the pandemic, we're thinking about how do we offer our adult programming differently. 21, you can see we still had some program, but we really focused in on the bare essentials. And really what we saw at the time, that was fitness. Adult fitness, people still wanted to gather and do the fitness classes. So that's what that little blurb is. 21, 22, and then in 23, you can see we're starting to do some increased programming, add some things back. But again, we're trying to be really thoughtful about what we add back, how we offer it, to make sure that what we offer is of value to our community and meeting a need. And then the last participation one, our largest program is Kids Club. It's our after-school, school-age care program. And while the drop in revenue you see very drastically is evident, the call and the call on our staff would be the opposite of that. So if you remember, and I can't say this in the earshot in my office or among the Kids Club sites of essential care. So when the schools shut down and we were tasked with in 48 hours coming up with a child care for essential workers, it was really our Kids Club staff who were the core of that, and along with other staff from throughout the district. But we had the structure in place because we have a large and successful school-age care program, and we were able to put that in place. However, being our largest program, that was one of the things that impacted our budget, is as it cut down so dramatically from over 2,000, well over 2,000 enrollments for a number of years, down to in the peak of the year, 21 school year, when we had, I think in that year we had distance learning, we had hybrid learning, and we had in-person learning, all three of which was a different care model. We had the most enrollments we had that year was 700, so it was still really challenging to offer that. And so you can see we've started to come back from that over the last couple of years. The biggest challenge we have now, so pre-pandemic, the cap really was the space we had in buildings before and after school. Right now it's the ability to find staff. So we have our programming back, but we're still at about 60 to 70% capacity with waiting lists. And so we're working really hard to come up with ways, maybe we can get a video, to recruit staff in our positions, because we know families need that care. We know from the pandemic how essential it is, and we really want to get back to those numbers so that we can serve our community and provide a high quality care situation. And so we opened up our registration for next year, and that dot is the cap we have based on our current staffing. So we haven't even opened it to new families, and so we want to be able to do that, because we don't want the first experience someone who moves to our community to be call up looking for childcare and say, sorry, we're full. So our goal is to provide care for anybody who needs it. So getting into our actual budget and where we're at for this next year, there are some things that we consider when looking at our revenues. And like I said, we budget based on what we know. We do know a lot of our funding and our aid and our levies that the state allows us to operate under, they are based on the census population. And so you can see that our 2020 census population was 107,987. So we know with a growing district like ours, that's beneficial for a community education budget. The early childhood family ed budget increases based on the basic formula. That was a change made a few years ago. So whatever the legislature settles on the formula increase, ECFE will see that increase. However, the negative is Kids Club enrollment is down, and it's down not because of the demand, but because of our capacity. So we hope to bring that up. We do know we have strong youth rec and enrichment program. Throughout the pandemic, our ABE funding, along with our early childhood funding, continued at the state. The state maintained those levels, and so we were really fortunate there. So we have stable funding there. We're starting to bring back more and more aquatic swim lessons program. The challenge now is finding enough lifeguards and instructors because there's a 2-year gap when we weren't offering it, and so we didn't train those younger instructors to grow into the positions or lifeguards. And we are looking to increase our adult enrichment programming, and that does include our seniors. And so we closed our senior center proper during the pandemic. We never reopened it as a true senior center. We offer adult programming in that space. So you might go in there, like this afternoon, you might go in there and you would have seen a group of retired community members playing cards, hand and foot. It's the game I've never heard of, but it's a game that they really enjoy. There was another group around the corner learning English. There was another group in the back room preparing for GED tests that are coming up. So you'll see adult programming happening simultaneously in that space, which is a really great model because they're learning from one another as well. And so I don't envision we'll ever open a true senior center. We'll just continue to expand our adult programming, which will always incorporate seniors. And we worked really hard to understand what they were missing to make sure we're offering what was missing during the closure of the center. So that is looking at our revenue. So now this is a look at where we get our money, or how we build our budget through revenue. So you can see, as I've said, fees is the major part, 70%. So when things shut down, that's why we took such a big hit. We do get state aid, and we are authorized to levy our community. You can see the list of where the levies are applied, and then also where the aid is applied. So those numbers change primarily based on population, which is why, again, being in a growing district is very beneficial to continue to meet the needs in that growing district. And then now switching, last slide with revenues as we look ahead. So we talk about being prepared for what's 31 meters ahead of us. We're not really sure, but what we do know with revenue is that there's some legislation working its way through. We hope that when all the dust settles at the Capitol, it benefits our students and our programs. We anticipate, based on where the House budget was and where the Senate budget was, these increases will result in somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 in increased revenue for community ed in South Washington County. There's a bill in each chamber to increase our general community ed revenue. That hasn't changed since 2006, so it's been quite some time that's been flat. We do anticipate in adults with disabilities, we get a levy for that, and that has not changed since 1972. At that time, there was a dollar amount put out. Any district could levy for their needs up to this capped amount, and we received just shy of $7,000 a year for adults with disabilities programming. To put it in perspective, when I worked in Hastings, I ran that program, and they get levy and aid for $60,000. So a district a third our size gets over 10 times as much, because in 1972, they saw, hey, we can provide this programming, and for whatever reason, we didn't see the same need in South Wash. But that would increase to somewhere between $30,000 and $60,000 when that settles. We know that there's bills or funding for voluntary pre-K, and then also some grants for after-school program. The other thing that we have going for us as a growing district is we can ask MDE through the state demographer's office to increase our census count in off years. We don't have to wait till 2030 to do that. And so We know that based on the demographer's office, we saw an increase of about 3,300 residents in 2021. And so if that continues, that would be a nice increase. And so the process for that is that we have to have that approved by July 1st by you as a board. And then we'll get that fiscal year 2025 is when we would see those dollars. So we would levy next year and we'd see it 2 years from now. So I believe I'll be on the June 15th agenda to do that. So we'll have an updated number from the demographer on June 1st. So I'll bring that back, and that will help us increase some revenue as well. So as we switch over to where we spend our money, we know that the increased salary and benefit costs, just like Wendy and Bobby Joe shared, both in the anticipated increase in the bargaining groups that we work with, but also in increased staffing, so bringing on more staff. And then just one big cost that we brought back just this year is it's expensive to print and mail our publications. We did some outreach and some surveys with our community to say we had been offering it for 2 years, virtual only, and we heard overwhelmingly that people want the physical media so they can page through it, so they can circle it. But the majority, like I should have had the percentage, 99%, I'm guessing, is all registered online. So they go and register online, but they want to flip through it. A lot of the respondents said they like it on virtual and in paper. So we do see value in producing that. It is, though, an increased cost. And as the cost of everything goes up, so is the cost of printing and mailing and so forth. So that's really what's driving our increased expenses. When we look at where we spend our money, our majority of our program is school age, and so 65% of it goes toward school age. So that's programs like Kids Club I talked about, camps and clinics, our after school enrichment, and really summer is a big time. The early childhood is our early childhood family ed, preschool, and that program continues to grow as funding comes. And then the adult piece is really, we talked about adult basic education, talked about our senior citizen programming, and then just programming in general for adults. So that piece of the pie has gone down a little bit over the years as the early childhood has grown, and that school age has pretty much stayed the same in the 10 years that I've been working here. And then what do we spend it on is mostly staff. Salaries, wages, you can see is 83%. And then also the services number there, primarily that's vendors that we work with to provide programming. So that might be like a Mad Science might come in and provide after-school enrichment, driver's education we offer through Safeway in our buildings. So the services really is personnel as well. So if you add all of that together, then we get up to 95% of our money is spent on people to provide programming for our community. So that is where we spend our money. And so when we talk about what else, what's ahead, where might we see some increase in expenses that aren't currently in the budget? And there's a few areas that are on the horizon that are sort of within that 30-meter eyesight that we see could increase in some of our expenditures, waiting to see what comes back from the legislature before we make some final decisions. But we know one of our most successful programs that we've offered over the last number of years is our Summer Schoolie program. That really is an outreach program. It's going out to our community at various sites throughout the summer to provide programming, bring community resources together. It's also our most diverse programming that we offer. There's both racially, culturally, and age. We see young families with young kids. We see older adults coming to those programs. And what we know is that when we see who our community is, and I think about even when I drive the schoolie bus through the parades and I see the community lined up on the curb, our community is very diverse. And so are we meeting the needs of all of our community members? And so looking at one of the positions we would bring on board would be a family and community liaison to really understand and help us connect with all of the pockets within our community and support our program. The other thing that we have, we're in charge of overseeing the use of the policy that you have for the use of school facilities, so evenings and weekends, and that's really a big task, and we bring a lot of community members in to use those buildings. However, it's not always, doesn't go always as smooth as maybe the permit says it will. And so we're looking to bring a supervisor in that can really look at safety and security in those off hours, those evening hours, be a presence at those big events. And so that's a new position. We've had roaming building supervisors in the past. We've had supervisors where we offer programming to check people in. This is really elevating that position to really be a presence to provide that safety and security component. So we're really looking at what that might look like and how it might best serve our community in the evenings in our buildings. We also know that as the economy continues to be a challenge, and we've heard the challenge of asking the voters for additional funds, we see that too with families who just simply can't afford programming, and we don't want to turn kids away because they can't. So looking at increased revenue can help us increase our financial assistance so that we can provide discounted rates for families and increase that. And then finally, the program, like I said, that we're part of a consortium to provide programming for our adults with disabilities, but increasing our adults programs, and then with an additional revenue through the legislation, anticipate seeing a larger offering or increased offerings for adults with disabilities, but also working with our cities to talk about the needs that we see that seniors have and how do we work with them, and looking at adults as we continue to grow back. So that's really an area for growth. And the lens that I talk with my team about when we think about adding back and what we offer is there's two weird words that always come. It's the access and the experience. So how do people find us? How do they get access? How does that child who doesn't know that they love chess find out about chess club, show up and learn chess so that they can then find that excitement? Or that child that doesn't know what they like, and so we have sports camps and things like that. So how do they access us? And then once they get there, what is that experience like? How do we support our coaches and our instructors to give that best experience possible? So that's really the lens that we think of as we talk about and plan to move forward. So that's I look forward to coming back over the coming months and talk about areas that we're growing, bring my team in and talk about the impact that we're having. And really, we're, as you can see here in this next slide, we're getting to a point where we're really prepared to move forward with some of that innovative and unique programming that meets the needs of our communities. So you'll see at the end of the current year, we anticipate a 12.15% fund balance. With the current budget that's being proposed now, that would increase to a 15.5% fund balance. Similar to nutrition services, the state says we can't go over 25%. And really the fund balance is that balance between fund balance, it's not a fund balance, but it's the difference or the balance between making sure that we're spending our revenue to meet community needs, but also being prepared for the uncertain and for the needs that we don't know about. And so we don't have a specific target, but that 15 to 20% is a really responsible fund balance. And so I feel like at the end of this year, we'll be really ready to start bringing back more robust programming that either was lost or that we're yet to discover through some of those needs assessments. So.
I just have a question. Yeah. How did you find a rhino tie to go with your joke and trivia today?
Did you like that?
He's got a crash of rhino on his tie.
feeling bad because the ladies had their nice floral blouses on, and I usually, it's just an analogy that it has been in my brain for many years about being prepared for the uncertainties. So my wife actually bought this for me for Christmas last year. So
I have one suggestion. Pickleball.
Pickleball. Yes, we offer it. We offer it in the winter. Yes, absolutely. And
They're nuts about it.
yeah, young and old. I mean, every age group pickleball is big.
So I did have a question. So if somebody wants to run a class through community ed, do we have any, what are the barriers for them to do so? Or what do we look at as what criteria would be?
Great question. And so it depends, right? So youth programs are a little bit different than adult programs. And so the policy that's in place really talks about bringing the resources within our community. So someone who's passionate about something or knowledgeable about something to our broader community. So using an adult idea as an example, typically, so Gretchen Carlson, who's our adult programs coordinator, has a process in sort of a questionnaire that she works through, whether that's sending it to someone and then getting it back or sitting down and working through it to understand sort of what the background is, what their expertise is, what their end goal is, sort of what the capacity that they're able to offer is, then determining out a price point, any supplies. And so she really works through that. And so really we're open to pretty much any ideas that fit within the appropriate use of our school facilities. We also offer programming outside. There's some school districts we don't offer it, but do like the wine and painting type things and offsite facilities. We haven't done that. So we're really open to it. And that's the other question that I get asked sometimes when we're looking at, you offer so much, what if it doesn't go? Well, a successful community ed program should have about an 80% go rate, go, no go. So we should be canceling about 20% of our classes in any catalog, which seems high, but that means we're being aggressive enough to offer things beyond the need. So we're meeting the need and some. And so we might try it. And if you're willing to develop the class and put the time in, we can't guarantee you that you're going to get participants, but we'll do our best to work with our communications specialists to promote it and get especially new classes. So yeah, reach out to our office and whoever has, if there's ideas, gets it out there. So.
Lawrence, our Director of Communication.
I could have introduced myself. Thank you.
And so that means that your next presentation, trivia question number 2.
I'll start working on it right now. I'll even try to find a tie to attach.
Dan, the race is on.
Dan.
Got competition now.
Yep, sure do. All right. Next we have 5.3, which is public transportation update, and that will be given by Dan Pine. And Sean.
Good evening again. As you know, we've been working on tightening up our transportation routing, mainly because we're finding the job market is not producing enough drivers for us to fulfill what we've been doing all along, which is running about 100 general education routes and actually contracting out about 66 special education routes. We know that the distance parameters that we use for transportation of 1 mile for elementary, 1.5 miles for middle school, and 2 miles for high school are not going to change next year. One thing we can do as we try to route and get a better handle on who's all riding the buses is to start an opt-in program. And I will turn over to Sean to explain the opt-in program and process and how it's going.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I don't have jokes or trivia, but I'll try to use brevity as we get to 8:15 here. So I think a lot of y'all know what opt-in has been. So in March, we started coming out with an opt-in, and we had told families that we needed them to opt into transportation instead of opting out. And the idea being that the more people that you have do something, the more that they tell you what they're doing. And so if you opt out, you sort of get the good willing or the good intentioned people to say, I'll opt out so somebody else can have my seat. Opting in, you're requiring them to think through, do you want us to, do I need to use the bus or not? And so we did that in March, and we've come up, and I'm happy to say, because I know that the first time this came, the question was, are people listening, right? Because it was on the heels of the survey saying people didn't hear anything about things, and so we have received responses from 16,000 of our students. Which far exceeds anything that I expected. And that's 11,200 of our families in South Washington County Schools. So far, 2,200 students have opted out for our AM routes, and 2,000 students have opted out for our PM routes, which makes sense if parents can drop their kids off in the morning, but they may need them to get home on the bus in the afternoon because they're still working. We still have to connect with about 1,200 families throughout this phone calls through the school district. So, when we did this campaign, we did tell people that if you don't opt in, you've opted out. But we don't know if people got that communication. We don't know if they understood that communication and things like that. So far, we have about 1,200 families who we still have to reach out to. So we've started making some phone calls. Our schools are going to be making those phone calls and are making those phone calls. They have the relationships. They know these families. It just makes the most sense. And they also can separate that out from all of our schools. That isn't a giant number. When we have started making these phone calls, though, a lot of the responses have been, I thought I opted out because I didn't do the survey. And so that's a good sign when we have 1,200 left and we've gotten to 2,200. So I really do anticipate that as we make these phone calls, more of these families are going to say, I thought I opted out because I didn't do the survey. But we just have to make sure because the idea is not that we don't provide bus transportation. We have also reached out and done a charter in non-public because we transport them, those students as well. We've gotten responses from about 600 families for our charter in non-publics. About 127 have opted out for AM in that, and then about 30 for PM. So that's a little different rate than we have for our schools, but it still sort of resonates the same way. Again, the same process is going to happen if those schools are the ones who communicated that to their families, and you know, if they don't opt in, they've opted out. And I just do want to remind everybody that as we do that, people can always call. The opt-in is always up on our website. We are going to provide transportation for people who need transportation. So a couple weeks ago, I heard a lot of questions that I could have answered or had some answers to, but I wanted to get this data squared away before I came back and was able to sort of provide this update to you all. With that, I think we can take any questions if you have them. About next steps.
For the non-publics and charters, the 600 people that have opted in, is that like a similar proportion to the number of students that we transport for them as these 16,000 students are to our, you know, roughly 19,000 student population?
Dan, unless you know that number out of the gate, I haven't had the opportunity to really look at that to that level yet. But I don't know if Dan and or transportation.
No, I don't. I was trying to think it in my head real quick how many would be, but I don't have the charter and private set.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, like, is there like a lot of runway left, or are we close to, you know, a final answer or something? Like, that's all I was trying to figure out.
I'll look up that information for you.
One question, for the students that have opted out, do we know if they fall within the non-busing areas already?
That's a good question. So the numbers that I've given you do not include the walkers or the people who are transporting their own kids. These are students who would have ridden our buses, so they're outside of that zone.
I have one question. I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, do charters and the private schools, don't they have to opt in anyway? I mean, so we know where they go to school and we know that we have to pick them up?
Well, we work with the schools directly on who needs transportation, but they'll tell us who needs the transportation and the routing. But we get a lot better idea if the parents just tell us.
Actually, okay. Because I was like, how do we, if they don't already do that, I was wondering how we actually know. But okay, so that makes sense. So we were asking the parents versus their schools. So just like our process, it was the same thing was sent to.
We use the exact same process with them. I gave their school leaders the same playbook or the same type of toolkit that we had, and we also gave them a deadline. It was a little different than ours so that we could do our process first, and then we went to them, but it was almost identical to the process.
Any more questions? Okay, thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
All right. 5.4, the first reading of our proposed policy changes, and that will be presented by Superintendent Julie Nelson.
Thanks. I'm going to go even quicker because everybody's getting colder as they sit here. It was cold, and then didn't I say it was going to warm up? And then it gets warm. Yes, it warmed up. You were working. We were talking, and then it gets cold again. I'm seeing everybody go like this and sitting on their hands. All right. We have 6 policies being brought forward this evening. As a reminder for people watching online, the policies have been reviewed and revised to reflect updates in Minnesota statutes, definition, legal references, and cross-references. We do have a board policy committee that goes through that process with our executive cabinet members to review policies as they're being brought forward. And again, all of our policies are located online. For our policies being brought forward this evening, policy 409, employee publications, instructional materials, inventions, and creations. There's just one minor change, a comma. So let's note that. Policy 409. 423, employee and student relationships. Again, there are some punctuation and grammatical changes, as well as a number of updates to the legal references. And when we go through the policies, we always go back to MSBA to see what updated legal references are in place. Policy 516, our student medication. There is one adjustment to that policy, and that is actually the name of the form that needs to be completed if a family is asking for medication to be administered to their child. And that new form is called the Medication Authorization Form. Policy 520, student surveys. There are no suggested changes for that policy. Policy 707, transportation of public school students. Since the original posting, there was consistency of language is important, and making sure that anytime we use the word walking, that we are now striking through that and calling that non-transport areas. And so consistency was provided there and was posted with that updated language. 708, transportation of non-public schools. There are no suggested changes for that policy. And so with that, I would open it up to any questions or comments from board members. And Sharon, I think you need to ask if there's anyone.
At this time, we have public comment on policies only. Dana? Okay, not seeing none. We'll move right along and you're back on again.
All right. This is even quicker than the policies. Just a couple of reminders, more importantly for the community, but May 23rd is our final community meeting. Again, board members are invited to listen to how the conversation goes and to really hear the feedback firsthand. And again, we will have a survey that all that feedback will be brought back here. As we look at the next weeks, I think Justin said it well, that while people think you're winding down, in the world of administration and leadership and what's happening in the district and teachers, it's really a ramp up because it's a wind down of a year, but as you do that, you're also ramping back up because all the groundwork is being laid for the next year. We have a number of our senior awards nights, along with graduation in our district being held for all three of our comprehensive high schools on June 4th. We will also have a next step in an alternative high school graduation as well. And then finally, we recognize our employees on May 17th at our employee recognition banquet. And it's a great time to celebrate the wonderful work being done in our school district.
Julie, next is our board reports. We'll start with Belinda.
So as far as 916, had a meeting last night. The board is going to start getting involved in the strategic planning. So we discussed kind of the annual planning cycle and how the board's going to get involved. So that's something new with 916 that actually was part of the rules committee for the 916 board, and that's one of the rules that we adopted. And we adopted 3 rules last night. And then one thing I thought was interesting is we went over an approved resolution in support of the 916 Center of Intensive Education Preparation. And Julie, I don't know if you're familiar with this at all, what 916 has. It's an alternative way for staff to meet standards for licensing for ASD and EBD licensure. So they can actually get those licensures through 916. And it's also a way that, that 916 can retain staff more and help with some of those labor shortages. So, and then other than that, graduations at 916 are coming up throughout May and June, just like our district graduations. And I do have access on an email to all the different dates, locations, and times for any board member that's interested in going to any of the graduations where we have district children that are graduating.
I attended the XU meeting. I'm sorry. I attended the XU meeting a couple weeks ago. Oh, let's turn it off. Now I have it on. So I attended this XU meeting a couple weeks ago, and we approved our strategic plan. We also met the new members. They doubled the number of elected members for the committee or the board. And so we met those people, and we also have a new brand, but I can't tell you what it is. It's secret, so you'll hear it, and it's pretty good. It's a lot better than XU, so and it's interesting. Okay, so we also they're focusing on staff development. They think they're asking every district to give them ideas of what you need. Maybe they can provide that, and they do have some paraprofessional training to make a para highly qualified, and the testing for that is free. They have a little bit of money left from that grant, so if you know someone who's interested in becoming a para, have them contact the EXU and ask about that and see how much is left. There's not a whole lot left from that grant, but there is some. So, and I think our next meeting is a couple months away, but look out for that branding name because you're going to be surprised. It's going to be really good. So that's it.
Thank you, Pat. Louise?
The District Ambassadors Committee met, and the primary focus of that was the long-range facility plan update. So they had an opportunity to look at the feedback that's already been given and then set forth their priorities and give their own feedback.
Sure. Like Louise, I was at Ambassadors, and then you all heard about policy. At CFAC, we talked about strategic plan language and what people on CFAC thought maybe were opportunities for improvement. Of course, we've already met about that, so there's nothing I can share. And then the Achievement and Integration Committee had a presentation about the English Language Learner Program and how it has evolved. And then also SoWashCo Cares came by and talked about their programming, and they kind of set the equity program rollout and calendar for next school year. That's it.
Nothing for me.
Katie? Out. All right, 7.0. Our future meeting dates, our next meeting will be a business meeting on May 18th, 2023. Then a workshop meeting on June 1st, 2023. Those meetings will be held at 6 p.m. here at the District Service Center. Then there will be a strategic planning meeting for the school board on Thursday, June 8th at 5 p.m. here at the District Service Center. And 8.0, at that point, we are adjourned.